Hi, Glenn. I'm a little wobbly this morning. Hi. Is justice as wobbly as I feel this morning? This Senate report, it really does feel like added to a giant stack of Trump crimes. I know you talk about this all the time, but I honestly, Glenn, I know I sound like just a civilian here, but I don't understand the law as it applies, or in this case, does not apply to Donald Trump. I don't, even lay people, you can look at this stuff and go, how are all of these people not at least indicted, arrested, whatever it is? I don't even know where you want to start. But okay, go ahead.
I'll start with, the question, how long will the Department of Justice allow Donald Trump to make a mockery of the rule of law?
Right.
Because, I'm skimming through this report, and let's just take one quote from one piece of the report. We learned that Donald Trump in the Oval Office said to acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen, quote, "One thing we know is you, Rosen, aren't going to do anything to overturn the election," close quote. And then Donald Trump tried to get this character, Jeffrey Clark, who was willing to do Trump's criminal bidding to try to overthrow the election, tried to make him acting Attorney General. So if you pull out the criminal code, I never go far without my big, ugly blue book of federal laws, the United States Code.
Oh, your giant gavel.
One law that Donald Trump violated with that conduct. It's called coercion of political activity. And in 10 seconds or less, here's what it is. It says, it shall be unlawful for any person to intimidate, threaten, command, or coerce, or attempt to intimidate, threaten, command, or coerce any member of the federal government to engage in or not engage in political activity. That's a 3-year felony. Donald Trump inarguably committed that crime. It's right there in black and white. There are firsthand accounts, Steph, which are admissible in court. The actual witnesses who saw him say and do these things. How long does the Department of Justice let Donald Trump make a mockery of the rule of law? When does the department stand up for we the people?
So, Glenn, take us through this again as lay people. In your opinion, what is the point of this January 6th commission? Can it be helpful in that they're making criminal referrals? Because I know we all keep thinking, where's the DOJ in this? Like the January 6th commission, great, but is the January 6th commission at least a good tool in, the Justice Department acting? Does it put enough pressure when people read this Senate report to go, where is the DOJ in this?
Yeah, here's why it's a good tool, because we are learning about what went on. And frankly, we wouldn't be learning any more about what went on because the Department of Justice is not issuing indictments, speaking indictments, which we saw all the time during the Mueller investigation, is a way that the Department of Justice tells us what the F is going on in our government, in a corrupt presidential administration. But DOJ won't do any of that. So at least we are learning more about what went on, courtesy of the January 6th committee. And the January 6th committee ultimately can make criminal referrals. When they learn what goes on, when they tell us about it, they can then refer any possible crimes to the Department of Justice.
Yeah.
And the Department of Justice must act. They have to decide whether to investigate or not.
Right. I mean, again, just to the normal person, these are not just, it feels like a committee's like, oh, well, this was bad behavior. This is not bad behavior. This is not just illegal. This is very seriously illegal. It is, whether it's sedition, treason, whatever you want to call it, a coup. I don't even know legally. But I mean, you talked about Trump's statement in the Judiciary Report, and you just said, for gosh sakes, indict him already. The criminal conduct is beyond dispute. I mean, I was looking at just this latest. I mean, how many counts of this of obstruction of justice is this, Glenn. Trump is encouraging folks to defy subpoenas right now. Judy Woodruff reviewed the letter that Trump's lawyers are sending to those subpoenas, incorrectly claiming that everything they're being asked is protected by executive privilege. Biden has indicated he won't allow the use of executive privilege to cover anything involving January 6th. Even if Biden were willing to, he couldn't, according to past Supreme Court decision in Nixon, correct? So what is happening with that? First of all, A, that's obstruction, and B, he has no executive privilege, right?
Yeah, here's where we are on criminal contempt of Congress, and this is about to heat up, and we all have to make our voices heard and demand that Congress act this time, unlike the Mueller report, unlike impeachment, where it wouldn't act to enforce its subpoenas. So first of all, Donald Trump telling those 4 men, in air quotes, I always put men in air quotes when I'm talking about Bannon, Meadows, Patel, and Scavino, telling those 4 individuals, do not comply with congressional subpoenas, do not testify and provide incriminating information about me. That's mob boss talk. That's no different than him gathering these 4 people in a room and saying, if you snitch on me, y'all are gonna get hurt. That's what he just did, because he has no lawful executive privilege to invoke. Now, all 4 of these people are in contempt of Congress as of midnight last night because they didn't deliver the documents that had been subpoenaed. They will be in contempt the second time next week when they don't appear for testimony. But not all contemptuous witnesses are created equal. Look at these 4 witnesses. Bannon left the Trump administration in August of 2017. He was only part of the administration for 6 months. So there's no way anybody can say he was a member of the executive branch and there would be any claim of executive privilege in 2020 around the time of the election. That is why Congress needs to use its inherent power of contempt. 3 words: lock him up. Right now, you have the authority to do it, and then you confine him until he purges the contempt, which means he testifies. With respect to the other 3, they were administration officials, but there's still, as you set out, there's no executive privilege anyway. So handle them differently. Refer them to the U.S. Attorney's Office for a criminal contempt prosecution, because that is now back in play because we have Merrick Garland. We no longer have Bill Barr in charge. So treat them slightly differently, but go hard, go aggressive, both guns drawn on all 4 of those contemptuous witnesses.
You expanded, Glenn, on Twitter in particular about Bannon. You said Trump and Bannon's ongoing conspiracy. Trump tells Bannon to defy congressional subpoenas. This is a Trump cover-up in plain sight. Hey, DOJ, justice matters. But when you go back, you say, let's recap. Steve Bannon creates a bogus We Build the Wall Foundation to steal from Trump's base. DOJ indicts him. His co-conspirator, Donald Trump, pardons him. Bannon keeps the stolen money. Now Trump tells Bannon not to comply with congressional subpoenas. And you just say Trump and Bannon are in an obvious and apparently endless criminal conspiracy, and we the people continue to wait for indictments to drop. And you just put it best. You said DOJ inaction equals DOJ endorsement. You are absolutely right. This is endorsing this. It is endorsing the next coup. If they just do nothing. I mean, what honestly do you think is going on at the DOJ? Anything? Nothing?
I honestly think they are hard at work putting together an enormous conspiracy indictment. It took a couple of years to finally hold all of the Watergate co-conspirators accountable and get President Nixon to resign. That took 2 years, Steph.
Right.
I think they are hard at work putting it all together. And in part, this is not me being Pollyanna, I cannot conceive of living in a country where our Department of Justice declines to hold all of these obvious criminals accountable. I cannot conceive of that United States of America, because if that's the way we're going, then we will not keep our republic. Because if you don't hold Trump and company accountable, then the next batch of political criminals will do things that are even worse, more horrible to our nation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you saw this stunning moment yesterday about the, Arizona audit. Jamie Raskin asking one of the, insurrectionist helpers, what's his name? Biggs. Who won Arizona? Well, we just don't know. I mean, wow. This is it. And he apparently has been implicated by Ali Alexander, who was just subpoenaed. So, are we going to get to these members of Congress that have been implicated?
I hope so. If they committed crimes, and it looks like many of them did, we could go back to the reconnaissance tours that were being given of the U.S. Capitol prior to January 6th, and we're getting more reporting that, the insurrectionists actually knew which windows were the weak spots because they hadn't been shored up recently. Come on now, this is an inside job.
Yeah.
And we have to go after the members of Congress who are complicit. We saw, Josh Hawley wasn't hiding the fact that he was out there with the Nazi fist up, encouraging attack on the Capitol. So these members of Congress have to be held accountable.
And you were very helpful on Twitter. Contempt of Congress, 1 year. If a prosecutors bring obstruction of Congress charges, 5 years. Obstruction of justice charges are 20 years in prison. So let's just talk about one other person, Dick Durbin, talking about this Pennsylvania congressman.
Clark, who emerged in this, he was suggested to the president by a Pennsylvania Republican congressman, and then all of a sudden sprung out of the Department of Justice to everyone's surprise and became the president's man. The president even promised him, apparently, that he would be the next attorney general. And what he did in terms of asking for the Department of Justice to get involved in this political exercise goes way beyond the bounds of fitness and his worthiness to serve as a lawyer in the District of Columbia.
So more people than we even heard of, obviously directly implicated. What stood out to you in this whole Senate thing? It's a lot, isn't it, Glenn? I mean, the report reveals Trump asked the DOJ for assistance in overturning the election a total of 9 times. I don't know if that's 9 separate counts, but okay. So, but they have everybody involved, call logs, the stuff that you guys would call evidence.
Evidence of a criminal conspiracy to overturn a presidential election, a criminal conspiracy for a sitting president to unlawfully and unconstitutionally retain power. All of that is chargeable under federal law. It's 18 United States Code 371. It's a conspiracy to commit offenses against the United States. Steph, this is precisely one of the counts that Robert Mueller brought against the Russian Internet Research Agency, a 371 conspiracy to interfere with the U.S.'s free and fair elections. Donald Trump did precisely the same thing as the Russian Internet Research Agency did. And, if the people are going to have any confidence in its government, in our institutions, in the Department of Justice, these crimes, and this is not advanced criminal law, this is criminal law 101. All of the elements of the crimes that we're discussing this morning can easily be made based on the information that has simply been publicly reported. And DOJ has behind the scenes evidence that we don't know anything about yet. But if we're to retain confidence in our institutions, these matters have to be charged.
You brought up the Mueller report, and it's in one of your tweets that somewhere has gone missing now because there's a lot. But I mean, I think the way you said it, Glenn, this is what I was saying about yesterday. It just hit me, Glenn, all of it. Mueller report through, Ukraine, through, this overthrowing the United States government. I think you said, obstruction. He made a cottage industry since you look at the Mueller report of obstruction of justice. And I just don't understand. So is that just done and gone now? All the obstruction from the Mueller report? Are we because I just feel like each of this has enabled the other, right? Then he did Ukraine, got away with that. So now it's like he's, again, as you say, it's a cottage industry for them, obstruction of justice. How does this stand?
It shouldn't all be gone and forgotten, because really dating all the way back to the campaign finance violations and seeking and welcoming Russia's assistance in interfering in our free and fair elections to Donald Trump's advantage through the Mueller report's 10 counts of obstruction, all the way through the insurrection and yesterday's obstruction of justice by telling those 4 witnesses, do not testify, do not incriminate me. It is one ongoing criminal conspiracy to defraud the United States. And I am hoping it will all make an appearance in a great big overarching conspiracy indictment.
Thank you, because it is all one story. He was not legitimately elected in the first place. He tried to illegally, cheat with Ukraine. He tried to illegally stay in office after he lost. I mean, it really all is one story, isn't it? And it's, I just, like I say, it is amazing. You look at other countries, and you just think they don't allow this. You're not allowed to try to overthrow the United States government, and we all just shrug and go, oh well. I mean, can all of these people be charged? All the Mark Meadows and the Eastmans and the Jeffrey Clark, wouldn't ideally they all be charged? I mean, it's not just Trump. Yeah.
They are all co-conspirators. They all should be charged. And as I say, if we care about keeping our republic, they all will be charged. I think what the Department of Justice underestimates, and this is really what's doing the most damage, is that the American population has reached its boiling point, because we see these politicians committing crime in the harsh light of day and not being held accountable. That's a recipe for governmental disaster. So, we need to start to hear some things from the Department of Justice now.